The Oscar noms are out, boys.
The Oscar noms are out, and I'm curious, as you guys sort of, since we focus on TV so much, I feel like it is appropriate sometimes to look at what else is happening in the zeitgeist that is pop culture. And if you have any like hot takes about the Oscars, or maybe you're just sort of like, okay, like this happened. There are movies that I saw and they aren't a part of this Oscar list, or maybe wow, I saw everything and I'm so cultured.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
I watched Josie and the Pussycats for the first time this year, and I'm shocked that didn't get a nomination right now.
Yeah, really, they need more credit. They broke ground on so many things. Max, what about you?
Oh, absolutely was robbed of a Best Original Song nomination in the early 2000s. Justice for the Challengers original score,
Dude.
Justice for Ain't No Love in Oklahoma from Twisters in Best Original Song, and Cardinal Lawrence and Conclave Hive We Eatin' this year.
I feel like the biggest controversy is about Amelia Perez, or at least for people who spend most of their lives on Twitter, which was me up until fairly recently. So the general consensus about Amelia Perez is that, it's a French but Spanish musical about a Mexican cartel, if I'm not mistaken.
Max, you're the most cultured out of all of us. Let the audience know what Amelia Perez is about.
It was originally conceived as an opera, and then it became a movie, and it's a kind of like hip hop operetta about a Mexican cartel lord who is trans and wants to escape the cartel, and gets help from their lawyer, played by Zoe Saldana, and it cleaned up with all the European film festivals, and it's got some contention here in the States, but it is 13 nominations strong. It is the most nominated non-English speaking film in history. It was one nomination shy of tying the record all time for Oscar nominations for a single film.
Which is
been a powerhouse this award season.
What movie has 14?
La La Land is one of them, and then blanket on the second one.
Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, I think, is the second one. But that is, it's one of those things where you hear about this movie, and like if you think about movies and the way that we watch them, award season is such an interesting time, because it's a time where it's like, hey, these movies were really good, and then there's a lot of them that no one saw. Like no one is going on a Zoom call before a meeting and being like, hey, did you see Amelia Perez? Wow. No, people are like, hey, did you leave space for Defying Gravity, and like making jokes about like Ariana Grande and all that stuff. And it's like, that's where it's interesting, because there are Max, we sort of talk about it all the time. I bring garbage to this podcast, right? I bring utter shit as far as TV, and you guys are just like, how does this have 200 episodes and like everyone's living on 3 boats because it was syndicated? And it's because there are people like me, and we make the majority, and then there are people like Max, who, when I watched the Emmys with you, had nailed every single Emmy nomination and winner, and I'm just like, I watched The Bear and I thought that was pretty good. Like,
well, Geoff, to your point, and for the record, it's All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land that tie the record with 14 nominations. They did a rule this year, which is they only allowed dads to vote on the Oscar nominations, which is how A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic, got 8.
I mean, have any of us actually seen it yet?
No, I have not. And I feel like I'm the closest, because there's a lot of it that takes place in Minnesota. Like,
no, there's only 2 ways to watch A Complete Unknown: either on an airplane or half asleep on the couch when it's on TNT in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, will I watch the Oscars? 100%. I think that it is even boosted more so, and we've talked about this with Conan O'Brien hosting the Oscars this year. I think that is a slam dunk, because there's a subset of people like us who are just like, yep, I want to see Conan O'Brien make
the
fun
last
of
time we let Conan host a major award show, he locked Bob Newhart in a cage.
It's one of the best bits that's ever been done at an award show anyway. So let him. I want to see what he's capable of this time, because now he has even less of an outlet to be insane every day. I mean, just a podcast, you can only be crazy in an audio form.
I mean, wrapping up this talk on the Oscars a little bit, I do really hope that we start to continue to see the trend of some of these movies that like, hey, they didn't have much budget, but they became cult hits, like The Substance. I hope The Substance gets a lot of talk. And if I was to hope for any movie to win, right, the Best Picture, if The Substance wins, I think that is the greatest victory in the world for the horror genre. Like, we can start having horror movies be Oscar winners.
Even beyond horror specific, and yes, like genre pictures getting nominated in this many categories is a big achievement. It is such a specific singular vision. It was dropped by Universal. It didn't land at Neon or A24, who both passed on it, and it was released by Mubi. I don't know what Mubi or Mubi is, but they put so much effort into getting this really specific, niche, disgusting, and beautiful genre flick in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And they promoted the hell out of it, and they campaigned the hell out of it. And they did all of that work with a fraction of the budget of people like, Amazon owning MGM, who we saw really very little love for Nickel Boys despite its praise.
Yeah.
Blank on challengers, blank on queer, and like money isn't everything. So shout out to Mubi, shout out to The Substance. It's a really great story this award season.
I wonder if challengers kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by doing like the overly sexualized marketing work, because it wasn't like an overtly the movie's not about sex. It's about like self-confidence, basically.
There's something to be said about timing of a release of a film and allowing that to be part of the buzz of the movie going into the award season. And like, Challengers was one of those films that everyone was talking about at the beginning of 2024.
That's right.
And then there were a lot of other movies that sort of took over that spotlight in the
But
time.
it didn't happen to Dune. Dune came out the exact same time, and Dune ranked in nominations.
That's
true.
And
Dune is for dorks. So, that there's your through line.
Dune is more of like a
make things for dorks so that they'll talk about it in an annoying way. Hello, passengers, and welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with service to Boston, Massachusetts, and the Cage and Fish Law Firm. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that all of our bathrooms on this flight are unisex bathrooms. Just be polite and put the seat back down. Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How you boys doing today?
I'm feeling good, Jeff. It's about to get Ally McBeal. I've got some really Ally McZeal. Let's Ally McSeal the Ally McDeal.
Rich, how are you, bud?
Good, but I got thrown off because I thought you said cage and fish, and I was just here for some blackened catfish. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, that does sound delicious, but unfortunately, Rich, while we won't be able to fix your appetite, we are going to be talking about Ally McBeal today, staying in the 90s and talking about a little bit of a revolutionary comedy when it came to the 90s. But before we do so, Max, do you mind telling folks what this podcast is all about?
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more and if they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes from wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and for at least 90 more days TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
And Rich, what is your question of the week?
It's important to have an expiration date on our social posts that keeps people exciting.
It makes these evergreen for sure.
So obviously the A plot of this show, and probably for a number of episodes, if not more, if not like full seasons, is that Ally goes to work at a law firm that is essentially co-run by her former like childhood / adolescent / college love, her longtime sweetheart. And I gotta know, like, if you were in Ally McBeal's shoes, would you stay at this new law firm, understanding that she is extremely capable? And why do you think you would stay or leave?
So, Rich, I thought about this a decent amount, and I was thinking about if I was a lawyer, right? Because there is a certain sort of ethics that follows you if you're a lawyer, depending on what you practice.
I think it's called The Law.
Yeah. I have to say, I think I'd probably, depending on how much I make, stay. And that is a key phrase. Because if I am making those solid 6 figures and, there's a pathway to partner, then yeah, I'm going to be there. But it also depends on how much am I seeing my ex flame.
Right.
Do I see them every single day? Can I hide in my office?
It feels like 30 times a day.
Yeah. Is Jane Krakowski going to be my secretary? That also is a big plus. So yeah, I mean, I think that there is definitely the will they, won't they that will always follow you. But at the same time, if you're a mature adult and you focus in on your work a little bit, I don't think it is going to be that bad. But if they annoy you enough, hey, you can sue. You're a lawyer. You can even represent yourself.
There you go.
Max, what about yourself?
A weaker person would absolutely run from the grind. In fact, they might even leave Boston entirely and start up life in a new city. But I don't think you could do that. I think that you need to, have some gumption, stick to your guns, and prove that you don't need that person in your life to be effective at what you do. You don't need them to define you, and you can be super successful, and then you can rub your success in their face. You can get petty as hell once you're winning cases.
Yeah, all right. I like that answer.
Rich, what about yourself?
Personally, based on 1997 rules here, if we're going on how women in the workplace were seen in 1997, Ally McBeal seems exceptionally capable as a lawyer and clearly got a great job at another firm that did not work out very well. I think she can go. She's a free agent, baby. She can go anywhere she wants. She's Roki Sasaki. She can go to any law firm in town. I'm positive that Boston is just littered with them. And yeah, I mean, rub that success in their face while they're also losing cases. Like, that is. I think if you're doubling down, also like Billy's wife Georgia showing up at the office does not a comfortable situation make. So I'm dipping out.
I mean, that's very fair. There are so many lawyers, according to all the billboards around my home.
If pop culture from this time has taught me anything, it's that if you study law at Harvard, you will run into your exes. Ally McBeal, Legally Blonde, third project.
The Practice.
Unnamed Max Singer pilot.
Oh my gosh. Well, Rich, thank you so much for your question of the week. Let's talk a little bit more about Ally McBeal. And we're going to start off with a quick synopsis. And when I say quick synopsis, this might be the shortest one we've ever had. Follow the personal and professional life of lawyer Ally. That's it. That's the synopsis of this historic TV show that we're about to do. But Max, I'm hoping you brought a little bit more than this synopsis did to our explanation of what we're going to talk about today.
Today, we are shipping up to Boston for the pilot of Ally McBeal, which originally aired on September 7th, 1997 on Fox. And for, I believe, the first time on TVPL, we're talking about the show's creator, David E. Kelley, a little bit more. A giant of the TV world, David E. Kelley is known for having created primetime hits at CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC, HBO, TNT, Disney+, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Hulu, Netflix, and something called Audience.
The most prestigious of them all.
He's like did you say Paramount Plus? He's
like one Paramount. Maybe
a Paramount Plus away David. From the Paramount Plus away from an absolute like a Hollywood bingo.
I was going to say, I dare you to try and make an EGOT acronym for that. Before his career in television, David was actually drafted by the Cincinnati Stingers of the World Hockey Association in 1977. What? The son of U.S. Ice Hockey Hall of Famer Jack Kelley, a coach and executive, David played collegiately at Princeton before attending law school and practicing in Boston. Yes, his dad was a coach in both college and professional hockey, as well as spending 8 years as the president of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
What? I mean, cool. Also, this is getting more Boston by the minute.
Kelley wrote as a hobby throughout college, and during his time practicing law, optioned his script for the legal thriller From the Hip in 1986, which would be released the following year starring Judd Nelson. His script and experience in law got him staffed on LA Law in 1986 as a writer and story editor. His first year working on the show, he kept his office back in Boston and continued to attempt to balance writing with his legal career before committing full-time to screenwriting when brought back for a second season with a promotion to executive story editor and co-producer. LA Law would go on to win 3 consecutive Emmys for Outstanding Drama Series and was nominated in each of its first 6 seasons. In the early 90s, Kelley would create Doogie Howser MD and Picket Fences, the latter of which won back-to-back Emmys for Outstanding Drama Series. To accompany Picket Fences at CBS, Kelley created the series Chicago Hope, which won an additional 7 Emmys during its run.
Oh my God.
In 1995, Kelley inks a 5-year deal with 20th Century Television to produce shows for both Fox and ABC. As part of the contract, each network would take on 2 shows. If one network passed, the other would have first dibs in the series, with Kelley retaining full creative control on projects under this deal. The first of these projects was ABC's legal drama The Practice, followed 6 months later by the premiere of Ally McBeal on Fox. Ally McBeal was developed as a lighter law drama for the 18 to 34 demographic for Fox to pair alongside Melrose Place. Fox originally wanted to push the show to a spring mid-season replacement in 1998 to avoid the bevy of new fall shows, but having gone through this at ABC at The Practice, Kelley held firm that it must be a full season order with September launch. The pressure paid off, with the show being an instant smash for the Fox network.
Wow.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about this show. And I just want to start off with the idea of the introduction of this show. Very much gives us the sense that nostalgia and music are going to play a very large role in our understanding, as well as, let's be honest, love life is going to be a large part of our relationship with Ally McBeal, the character itself, because we have this very sweet retelling of the idea of childhood love to start our show. And I'm curious, rather than going point by point and talking about some of the punchy jokes that are in this pilot, I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the themes that you guys noticed and saw with this. And I'm curious, what did you think about these moments where the show tries to be a little bit more sentimental and then turns immediately around and is like, what if we do a visual gag that's going to blow people's minds with 90s CGI?
Well, if we're talking about themes, first and foremost, this is a show that is primarily about scarves. When you watch Ally McBeal, you can't help but think, wow, scarves. I do like that they set this up very much, though, this is a pilot, and we're introducing you to a protagonist. Mm-hmm. We are building their worldview. This is a star vehicle for Calista Flockhart. This is 100% a show about the person who is the name of the show. It is about Ally McBeal. And so before we even get into what the major underlying issue is, what the inciting incidents are, what begins our hero's journey, and why we should follow this protagonist in this journey, we're going to just tell you about Ally's philosophy, her worldview. We're going to get into her childhood, her college days, her grad school days. We're going to give you this huge exposition dump on who Ally is, and how you take to her is going to impact what you want to do with the next 40 minutes of your TV viewing.
Yeah, this definitely feels like off the bat, like the show was already picked up for several episodes. So they're like, all right, we're gearing up for to tell a full picture story here. It's not like, the first, minute or two are all about young love, shot with like a very like nostalgic lens, using like child actors to show her and Billy's like romance as like developing from like being best friends as kids through high school, through college. And yeah, it definitely makes it feel like the legal aspect of this show is going to be pretty secondary to her own thoughts, to her own like relation to love.
And Rich, I want you to keep that concept of legal being secondary in your back pocket, because we're going to definitely be talking about that a lot. But I do want to talk about, even though I just said we're not going to go point by point, I want to talk about our inciting incident that really drives us to even have this the most piloty of pilots. And that is, we witness this telling of sexual harassment that I don't think I can really say I've ever seen before, with Ally having a coworker, someone who has a higher position than her, grabbing her butt, and then choosing to feign OCD so that he does not get fired. I will say, the actor who plays this character,
Richard Reel,
is going to look very familiar because he starred in Office Space nearly like right before or right after this show came out.
Yeah. They this poor guy, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, some people get hired because they kind of look scummy or boring or whatever. There's a lot of place in Hollywood for guys who just look the part like that. Boy, they made him grab a lot of asses on the set for this first episode. And number one, it already gives you kind of like a twisted view of the law in general, that like, no matter if what you're fighting for is right or not, it's whether or not it causes damages, basically, and or provable damages, which is like, okay, we're already going to get into legal semantics. We're already going to get past like the moral and ethical thing of, is it right or is it wrong? And it's very much just about like, how good of a lawyer are you? And that good lawyers can just kind of get away with anything.
Max, I'm curious, like, I feel like, and we were talking about this a little bit, that this show doesn't really dumb down the idea of a lawsuit. We've gotten fed a lot of TV, especially recently, that shows like you go into a courtroom and it's basically like legal theater kids, right?
Yeah.
Where they have these big speeches, and like,
to be fair, those are theater kids playing lawyers.
If you do a good enough job giving your big monologue, you're going to win your case. And it feels like this is telling a little bit of a different story. And I'm curious from your perspective how you feel about that.
I think there's a really interesting line that David E. Kelley, who wrote this pilot as well, has to toe between legal drama and we're pairing the show with the spinoff to Beverly Hills 90210 in primetime. And there's a thing there where it's like, you have to present your cases, your facts, your structure, but you have to do it in a way that I think is people first. That's what it always comes back down to. The entire montage of Richard Reel then going around the office harassing people is so over the top.
It is.
But I think that it is to show rather than tell. It is to put out these big visuals. And that's what Ally McBeal does so well, is it puts out big visuals. To your point of the like theater kids doing monologues to various degrees of effectiveness. If you watch David E. Kelley's most recent series, Presumed Innocent? With Jake Gyllenhaal at Apple TV, and compare it to something like Juror Number 2 that came out this fall as well. It is such a difference in the way that the legal information is conveyed. This is someone who is just so good at putting that on screen. I think it's interesting. There's just so many shows we've done over the years here that have been written by former lawyers, and there's something to like the way that translates to TV writing, whether it's being formulaic, whether it's attention to detail, presenting an argument, but it translates, and I like it.
Well, I think what that shows too is that these studios, if they get an opportunity for an expert in a field to also be good at dramatic storytelling, they're going for it. It's the same with the Americans hiring a former spy. It is very much like, if you can tell every one of those stories from personal experience, if you can translate the news of the day into like that particular context or anything like that, is Dick Wolf like a lawyer or like a former lawyer or a former cop or anything like that? Did he work in the I don't know if we've done a Dick Wolf show yet.
We haven't done a Dick Wolf show. That's actually a really solid point. While one of you is researching that, I want to talk about another interesting thing that I think this show does, which is after Ally decides to quit this original law firm that actually goes unnamed in the beginning of this pilot, we get to experience her running into an old classmate by the name of Richard Fish, played by Greg German, who absolutely won. Everyone looks so young in this pilot, and that's because it's nearly 30 years ago that this pilot was filmed. But I love using the tool of Ally talking about her understanding of different people, using one-off flashbacks in this instance.
Yes.
And the one-off flashback of Richard Fish talking about how his only goal and his only drive is money. And
Piles.
then piles of
money.
money, and then showing how he flirts with new potential clients in like two very different ways. It's so effective for a pilot to just say, this is this person's motivations, according to Ally McBeal, who is very biased because that's one interaction. They might be a much fuller and in-depth character.
And since the show did air nearly 3 decades ago, if you're not familiar with Greg German, you may know him as Dr. Tom on Grey's Anatomy, or as the owner of the team in Talladega Nights who wants to replace Ricky Bobby.
and he does such a great job of like the lawyer walk and talk thing. That's just the smarmy office thing. And it is like, it is such a fine line to walk with a smarmy character, because you can really make him over the top or so like gross or anything like that. I feel like he does a good job of like, yeah, I'm gonna say stuff that you're not particularly thrilled with, but also this is about the money. Like you can come and go, but his priority is on the money.
I mean, the other way that we see this, this show is very much about Ally McBeal's perspective, right? It is literally called Ally McBeal. And Max, I'm curious from you, because in sort of a little bit of a revolutionary technique, this show relies on a lot of VO as well as CGI and these visual gags that they repeat in the rule of threes. I specifically am thinking of Jane Krakowski's head growing as she's bragging about things that she's doing, as well as a fun visual of Ally McBeal sitting in a seat that is very large in compared to the size of her body. How effective do you feel that is? And was it something that tickled you, Pink?
I think that it had varying degrees of effectiveness for me, because we see it played out a lot of different ways. We see it, so first we see it with camera angles. We see when, especially with Richard Fish talking to prospective clients, we use a lot of forced perspective and, interesting camera lens techniques, very like Soundgarden Black Hole Sun kind of angles. That's an older reference to Ally McBeal. Why did I do that?
Post grunge, baby.
So we play with visual cues. We play a lot with like lighting too. There's a lot of like very bold colors in this show. There's like very, very blue bathrooms, like very interesting colors with like cool overhead lighting to create these washed out color palettes. We get a lot of VO, like Geoff said, of rhetorical questions being answered in real time. And then there's the CGI, which sometimes feels a little bit odd to me, like seeing Jade Krasinski's head balloon in size while she's just having a conversation. Other times to extreme romantic effectiveness. I don't know if you guys have ever made love to someone in a giant novelty latte before, but Ally McBeal was the first ones to do that, to present the concept of making love in a giant latte in a dream sequence.
and this is an interesting, like, I had a separate thing in my notes just for style choices of like these animations, these like weird cutaways, these kind of absurdist cutaways. Did it feel a little bit like adult Lizzie McGuire, that there was also just this like secondary? Yeah,
that is a great comparison, because there's one specific visual that is given of like, I think it's super interesting that this pilot chose to be like, Ally's a really good lawyer, but she's like everyone else in that she has invasive thoughts that sort of like run around in her head. And one of them was the what I can only call, and it is written in my notes as, I do wish my breasts were bigger as well. And then we have this ridiculous like ballooning situation that goes on, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't think that is something that I would say I would normally have our or expert or our person that we're supposed to believe is good at their job thinking. But at the same time, it makes the human and the protagonist a little bit more relatable than just amazing lawyer.
But you're right. It's the thing of, this show is about Ally McBeal. it is her first. It is her personality first. It's the law second. So her having intrusive thoughts, being this highly successful, young, accomplished individual who could still feel like I'm not enough in some regards. And we use this like CGI, like, breast joke to kind of show that, as opposed to something like Adam Sandler's movie Click, where we use that same kind of gag for the male gaze.
Yeah. And yeah, it just feels it feels very 90s. It feels very experimentally 90s. It also felt a little bit like, and I know we're a full year before this, but it felt very Sex and the City-ish. Like I feel like this almost inspired a little bit of the Sex and the City like style choice. Not
Yeah.
necessarily like the cartoonification of it, but just like internal thought.
There's a lot of shows that you could name that you could say after watching this pilot, like, oh, that feels a little Ally McBeal looking back on it.
Right.
So I do want to talk about, we talked about how the show is a lot about Ally McBeal, right? This is our view of Ally McBeal's life, and it happens to be at a law firm, and she happens to have to do the law as well. And one of the key things that I think this pilot really wants to ram in, and Rich, it relates to your question of the week, is one of the leaders of this firm is her ex-boyfriend by the name of Billy. I do have a fun little thing as opposed to our in-flight question that I'm going to share with you guys after we talk about this pilot, but I'm curious from your two how effective you think this will they, won't they thing seems, because they keep on shouting at us, hey, they're in love with each other still. Billy just got married because he lived in Michigan and Ally lived in Boston. But do you think there's believability behind this? And what do you think of Billy himself?
They made Billy a little too like 90s boyish looking for the character he's supposed to be. And don't get me wrong, like they have the makeup department for the show has done like a pretty C- job of illustrating ages, or like, because there are scenes of when Ally McBeal's in college where she looks older than the current character.
Yeah.
So
it's very When Harry Met Sally. It's very When Harry Met Sally.
100%. Yeah. And like, I get that we hadn't figured out like aging down like makeup or CGI or anything like that in 1997. However, like, yeah, I mean, let's definitely deep dive on this specific plot line alone, because it takes up, I would say, 90% of the pilot.
Yeah, it's a solid part. And the things that happen because of their relationship also take up a large amount of this pilot as well.
Yeah, and it feels like they almost resolve it by the end, but essentially Billy's Billy's wife Georgia shows up at the office while they're kind of hashing things out a little bit, kind of reminiscing over their past romances and stuff like that. And then Georgia does a completely insane move by showing up at Ally's house, and completely unwelcomed, like completely like out of left field. It felt like a very TV move to do. But they also kind of established that Georgia might be like a little, distrustful, leading to crazy. And yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily believe through the acting choices that Billy and Ally are technically still in love. It just like feels like too much time has passed, but they don't really name how much time has passed.
Max, I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think of this relationship with Billy and Ally?
I mean, I don't ship them. Like I don't. I don't.
That's
go
a great
into
way
this,
to put it.
I don't go into this pilot like my takeaway is not. I hope that Ally and Billy get back together and have a.
It's not Mulder and
sweet,
Scully.
Yeah, I don't want them to have like a sweet love affair. I want this to be let sleeping dogs lie and move forward. I think what this show really tries to accomplish, it's about a lot of really successful people learning how to be successful at being people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like they're all career minded. Georgia is also a very successful lawyer, but she harbors fear and resentment for this other woman from her husband's past. Ally struggles to get over an on and off again childhood boyfriend who transferred schools when they were studying law. And like everyone's learning how to come of age and like how to be the best version of themselves, but I'm not invested in them as lovers.
It's interesting that you bring that up of you're not shipping them, because there's a lot of other relationships in the show that I am shipping, right? I am shipping Richard and Elaine. I'm shipping more Renee, Ally's friend, with Ally than I am Ally with her former boyfriend, or Billy with his wife, Georgia. Like
Right.
there's interesting, if it is a lot of telling me that people are interested in each other and telling me that people are still in love with each other, rather than showing me, wow, you know what? Those two people are going to just like straight up fuck in that unisex bathroom.
Jane Krakowski as Elaine, her graze past Richard, where
Oh,
she
boy.
chooses to pass by him in the door frame, but first,
Yep.
is a bold move in a public workplace.
They also make Jane Krakowski look like Marilyn Monroe in this TV show, and it is like stunning.
It's really,
is this her like first role off of Broadway, basically?
yeah, this is one of her first. It's really funny because I'm rewatching all of Modern Family right now, and Jane Krakowski is in Modern Family.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In the later seasons, and literally watched an episode where she was in it, and then I forgot she was in Ally McBeal, and I was like, oh my god, like she looks nearly the same, and it is off-putting. Like, how
This is the second week in a row where we have dealt with a sitcom pilot from the 90s where one of the leads goes on to star in the Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas.
Wait, is Jane Krakowski in Viva Rock Vegas?
Jane Krakowski plays Betty in Viva Rock Vegas. Kristen Johnson last week plays Wilma. Rich, we're both watching The Traitors where Alan Cumming plays Gazoom.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
You better believe it.
Is the Flintstones in Viva Rock Vegas the seminal piece of pop culture from the 2000s?
Everything pivots around Viva Rock Vegas.
Find out in our new podcast, In Flight Movie, coming to a podcast network near you. But I do want to talk about the ending of this pilot, because one of the most critical things, and we talk about this a lot, if you don't nail the ending of your pilot, then why are people tuning in the next week? What is giving them that, oh, you know what, I want to watch more of this. I want to see what happens with Ally, or I want to see what happens on this other TV show. And this pilot seems to end in a lot of resolution, and not so much of a, hey, you know what, this is that thread that hasn't been tied together. This is the knot that we still have to, solve. And I'm curious from you two, does this pilot successfully lead to you being interested in more of this pilot? This isn't me asking my final two questions.
Sure.
This is more me asking from a pilot writing perspective. What do you guys think about the ending of this show?
I definitely like the moment where they trick Richard Reel's character into essentially admitting on tape that he made up his OCD. That was really like, that for me felt like a good resolution point where it's like, oh, this law firm is going to play a little bit dirty, but it's against people who played dirty first, and it's going to be for the benefit of Ally. Like they're going to solve things in a way that is not necessarily by the books, but they're still going to get the job done, and they're still going to have her back, which felt more compelling for me to like want her still in that firm.
Max, what about yourself?
Yeah, if this show is first and foremost about Ally McBeal, we create almost an all is lost moment for her, which I don't think we see in a lot of sitcom or like comedy pilots. Granted, this is more of like a dramedy, because like we have her deposition go poorly in this sexual harassment case. We, emotions get the best of her and create a situation where like that can be used against her. We do this bait and switch with Richard Reel's character where you think that, her law firm's essentially abandoning her in her quest for justice. And then we flip the switch really quickly and we reinstall her faith. We show how, both Billy and Richard, good Richard, not Richard Reel, I don't know why we don't just call him by his character's name.
I keep forgetting his character's
Billings.
name.
It's Jack Billings. I don't want to say Jack Billings. I want to say Richard Reel, damn it. But like we do all of these switches. We do all of these resolutions with Ally. I think it is effective in making you want to focus on this world more.
And for myself, I think that one of the things that the end of this episode leaves me with is we are in a very interesting situation. And this might have been intentional. This might have been extremely unintentional, where we leave Ally almost as a, oh, geez, why did I just forget what the term is called? An unreliable narrator. And it is in this Richard Fish situation where we see Richard come in and we as the audience are expecting him to be a scumbag because of only what Ally has told us, just to find out that, hey, you know what? He's a pretty good lawyer and a pretty good boss. He looks over his people. Oh, Ally, you're not into Billy. Well, that last scene sort of gives me the thought that you literally screamed at him. You're still in love with him and he's still in love with you. That is an interesting way of sort of saying, okay, what's Ally going to do next week? It leaves me with this thought of, Ally just left a law firm because she was sexually harassed. Is this show unintentionally about when will Ally McBeal leave Cajun Fish because she's been sexually harassed by her ex-boyfriend? Which I'm not saying that as a stab at this show. I'm saying that more as it is one of the questions that I have in the back of my mind, is that's how we were introduced to this character originally. So that is this pilot. I'd love to hear from the two of you about things that you loved about this pilot, things that you want to give a little bit more shine.
I personally, I mean, we'll go right back to old Dickie Fish. Richard Fish is I think a terrific character that I think would have been over the top if they put him in an environment like Suits, where, his misogyny and his just like, I don't know, kind of brash attitude would just go a little crazy. I think they did a really good job of creating this unisex bathroom thing as kind of the only private meeting place in the whole office. I thought that was like such an interesting choice that the writing team made to, or David E. Kelley specifically, made to have all these characters converge and like in a place that's private, because obviously you can have that be a meeting room or Ally's office or whatever the hell. But yeah, I think the center point of the bathroom, and also the way that that Greg German handles the character of Richard Fish is like I think pretty exceptional, and could have easily gone a little too cartoonish had he not reeled himself in.
Max, what about yourself?
We started with scarves, we ended with scarves. This is a show entirely about neck scarves. I want to give a shout out to Vonda Shepard's "Searching My Soul," the 90s ass rock intro of this show. It is such a banger, and I love it. There's basically a music video for it. It's a delightful opening sequence. And then this is a point that actually my wife brought up in talking about this pilot, which is that they cover a lot of different types of law in this pilot. Like a lot of the cases they handle is interesting. And something I think is fascinating in terms of like pilot building is we show Richard Fish basically willing to do anything and say anything to land clients, like someone who definitely manipulates and over promises to get people on retainer at this firm. And I think it also effectively says that we're not going to be pigeonholed into doing one type of storyline or one type of law here. And essentially it's like, hey, yeah, Richard will just do anything he can to get a case. So any cases we present for the entire run of the show are fair game. Like we don't have to think only in terms of one type of legal practice. We could do whatever we want. And it just makes sense because that's what Richard does.
Yeah, like within the episode, they are talking tax law, they're talking sexual harassment torts, they're talking First Amendment law, like constitutional law. They're all over the map.
And it's I think one of the benefits, and we talked about Dean E. Kelley's background in law, having someone who actually truly understands the plight and a journey of a lawyer, and like being in legal review, having published cases, all that sort of stuff. It's something we haven't seen before, and it does give the show the ability to talk about a lot of stuff, even though law is secondary to the plot. Max, I'm really glad you brought up Vonda Shepard, who actually appears in this pilot. And it's one of those things where like people don't really talk about Boston having a big jazz scene and a big singing scene, but they do. And that was awesome to see that as part of this. I want to give a little bit of shine to Lisa Nicole Carson, who plays Renee, who I thought was a really nice brush breath of fresh air in this pilot, as that best friend, as that character that we can sort of count on, who just, I don't know if they have any legal background based off of the pilot and the pilot alone, but they definitely give us more context to Ally as a person and what motivates and drives Ally. And that's important. You need to have people outside of work who can give us context to life outside of work in balance. I want to talk a little bit about wait a minute moments, things that caused you pause. And Max, you're shaking your head yes for our audience who isn't watching us on YouTube. So I want to know what is on your mind.
We've been doing the show for over 2 years. One day I'll learn that it's not a visual medium.
It's a theater of the mind, Max.
We watch us on YouTube. We touched on this in a complimentary way, and my wait a minute this week is not an attack on Ally McBeal, but it's a phenomenon in pop culture across the board, in TV, in movies, in music, in fashion, in everything, where when something is really unique and singular and catches on, you then start to see a lot of repetition and a lot of things try to copy that aesthetic or copy that sound, some successfully, but a lot with diminishing results. And in turn, it can affect the original thing that felt so inventive in the first place.
Oh, it becomes self-referential.
It can make you, in some cases, appreciate how good that original thing is, but it can also make you feel like it's on, treaded ground, even if you're seeing it for the first time.
Right.
The 2001 Space Odyssey phenomenon.
In this show, we see CGI bra inflation, Jane Krakowski's head swell like a balloon, twisted, bizarre camera angles, self-referential and rhetorical question answers in one's mind to things in real time, sex inside of a giant latte, the weird dancing twins, the quiver of arrows being unloaded into Ally, the score to Psycho premiering when the ex-boyfriend's now wife appears at her door. And I couldn't help but think how many times in 28 years since this pilot aired, I have seen these things in other TV shows. And it almost made it hard for me to appreciate how innovative all of this must have felt on primetime in September of 97, when I have 3 decades of things, including young adult TV, including flop shows, including dramas, including comedies, all having done it since.
Yeah, and I think the only place where you can be like really truly innovative and take big chances like that without alienating an audience is like kids media. Like I think and I think that's actually why my brain went to Lizzie McGuire anyways, because like you could not possibly do an adult TV show that is like that has a parallel inner monologue cartoon running alongside it by the entire time. But yeah, I 100% agree. I thought it was a little, it felt ham-fisted, but maybe it's because the CGI wasn't there, or because
my
the
brain
references
kept going to Scrubs throughout
yes,
it.
Scrubs.
Oh, yeah,
yes, I was thinking about that too. Yeah, it's extremely, and I feel like Scrubs actually like kind of tones it down after the first season. Like they take a lot of big chances with the inner monologue thing and like the warping reality. Yeah, 100% agree.
Rich, what about you? Wait a minute moments for you?
I guess I touched on it a little bit. But the makeup team, the hair makeup team for this show is just kind of like we don't care what any of these people look like at any particular phase in their life. They could look 22 when they're supposed to be 35. They can look 105 when they're supposed to be 21. Like it's just like it's so weird that there isn't a little bit more like followable continuity on that.
Sure.
I just think like I'm sure they figure it out later on. You know, this is just the pilot, but yeah, these flashbacks to like older times where Calista Flockhart looks like an entirely different person and has extremely curly hair, and yeah, and it's just like they make her look older in college than they do for the rest of the show, where she is a full ass adult. So yeah.
Yeah, and for myself, I think that one thing that bothers me is I want to root for my main character. I want to root for my protagonist.
For
I want them to
for Ally McBeal.
I want them to show opportunities where they are, hey, we talk about it all the time. I want to see you be good at your job so I know you're good at your job, right? If the law is going to be a secondary part of it, why do we keep on harping of, oh, I'm not confident unless I'm in a courtroom? I'm
Right.
There are moments like that where I was like, yes, there is something to be said about making your protagonist human so that the audience can relate to them.
Yeah.
But there was almost an over focus on it in this pilot. And I think that there were opportunities to maybe save a couple of those jokes for like, just do the, hey, once I'm in the courtroom, because I watched my dad be a lawyer and I wanted to be a lawyer too, I become a entirely different human being, and we can save the visual gag of the, you know, Ally McBeal being super tiny in a gigantic chair that I want in my home.
Geoff, I'm curious because you watched this, Max. Max, you were on injured list. How do you think this feels in comparison to the trajectory that we saw in Drop Dead Diva, where there's like the body swapping element, but then she also becomes like a capable lawyer?
Yeah, but that's the thing. She becomes instantly capable, and we
Yeah,
see her. But it's also, as you pointed out, Drop Dead Diva makes the law look like it's just something that if you read a book good, you can be like really good at it. Or if you know every Jeopardy fact, you can be good at it.
that's true.
This is a lot more realistic about what the experience of a lawyer is, at least in my mind, because I only know law through TV, what that feels like. We don't have an in-flight question this week, but we do have a new segment, and I am calling this segment "What Did My Wife Think?" So I normally watch this show with my wife Alex, and
At least it's not Daddy of the Week, Max. Just let it go.
no, it's not Daddy of the Week. And when I watch, sometimes I write down the things that she says. There was a very particular theme this week in that my wife absolutely despised the character of Billy Thomas, the
Yeah.
former beau. And I'm just going to share a couple of things that she said. And these grow in increasing meanness. The first one just being, oh, shut up. Ooh, twist, and Billy being married. Ew, what a jerk. On Billy wanting to work with on Billy wanting to work with Ally, even though he said he was in love with her. And my final and favorite, wow, how did Billy get hired? He's much uglier than everyone else at this law
Oh my
firm.
God.
So so that is what did my wife think, and you can let us know in the comments if you want more of that.
That's
In
so
future
funny.
episodes of TV Pilot's License. Well, let's talk a little bit about the history of this show and the legacy of this show. This show had 5 seasons and 112 episodes. So one of the things that was super interesting about reading about this show, we're going to talk about the success of it, was seeing the ratings of this show. The show got up to number 20 in its second season after starting at like number 35. In its final season, its 5th season, which was between 2001 and 2002, it went down to number 65, and the viewership dropped to about 9.4 million, which sounds like a lot of people now, but it was not in 2001 through 2002. That's a small viewership for a primetime show. The show was fairly famous for crossovers. We talked about Deanie Kelley also having The Practice. The Practice, since it was based in Boston, was in this universe, and they had crossovers with judges, lawyers, all those sorts of things, which is very fun. This show does have a few unique storylines about it, and I want to talk about the Iron Man in the room. Yes, Robert Downey Jr. was in this show in the 4th season and was also very publicly fired from this show after the 4th season, and you can read about that on your own.
Geoff ain't gonna tell you.
Yeah, so the character of Ally, even though when they set out to make this show, they wanted to do a very female perspective driven show that maybe drove forward the feminist movement, there was actually a lot of hate for the character of Ally McBeal, and Time magazine actually published an article with Ally McBeal on the cover called "Is Feminism Dead?" And then the show then had to comment about it, and they had a very witty joke about it as well. All right. Now, I told you guys I was really excited to talk about the history of the show. And there's one particular reason, because this is the weirdest thing that I've seen in doing this podcast for 2 years. In 1999, after the show came off of one of its most popular seasons, Fox decided, how do we get more Ally McBeal in people's homes? or specifically more Ally, because what they did is they edited this show and unseen footage into 30-minute episodes that broadcasted at the same time as this show was on parallel broadcasts in a sitcom format. They deleted all of the legal scenes. So you'll see on all of this cast, not only do they have Ally McBeal, but they also have a TV show called Ally.
Yeah.
It had 13 episodes. Only 10 of them were able to see the light of day. But wait till we do Ally on TV Pilot's License, because I'm so curious what happened.
Geoff, this was my game of the week question.
No.
That's so funny. Oh man, yeah, that was I was wondering when it would happen that like either Max, your research, or Geoff's research would overlap with my game of the week question, but this is because it is so fucking weird.
That it's insane. It's literally
what they did, Max, was they edited it out just the courtroom scenes. So she's basically a lawyer only by telling, not showing. And and they cut it down to 30 minutes to do that. And I don't know if they were going for like comedy Emmys or like whatever the hell, but it was completely,
they were already getting them.
Yeah.
Well, but here's a question for you two. We didn't have an in-flight question, but I'm curious, if you had to take a show that you really enjoy and take out the person doing their job, what show do you think would be the most impactful, or the one that people would want to watch the most? I'd love our frequent flyers to put them down in the comments below, because holy shit, that is a wild concept to just say, what if they didn't do their job and we just cared about their personal life and just that?
It'd be pretty amazing to see The West Wing, where Martin Sheen only tells people he's the president, but you don't see him doing any presidenting.
That's a very different show. That is an extreme.
Just a nice version of Sopranos where Tony goes to get lunch with his friends and then gets back home to his family.
I actually, like, if I think about it, Entourage is basically that. We hear
you don't
about
see Vinny Chase act at all.
How Vinny Chase is an actor. We hear about it all the time. We never see it. And that was a really successful show. So maybe they had a point. Maybe we just want to see the lifestyle of people rather than actually see what they're doing to be able to attain that lifestyle.
I really want to see what this Boston lawyer's up to without her too. only with a remote understanding that she's decent at her job.
The funniest part is I'm just imagining she loses a case and she walks in and she's like, well, I lost. And we're like, how? Like, you had a slam dunk case.
So do you guys want to hear my other three examples of like Fox's marketing move that I made up?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. All right. Number one was had Calista Flockhart in Ally McBeal character as a ref / rules expert during an NFL on Fox football game. B, had an episode of the show where all the characters are watching the brand new Fox series Family Guy in the background in their respective homes. And then C, put up a large series of billboards advertising Ally McBeal's pro bono legal service, prompting thousands of would-be or current criminals to call in.
That's amazing. Well,
careful, Rich. Those first two could be Super Bowl ads.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's watching Family Guy.
I do want to talk about awards, and this show had 134 nominations and 33 wins. That includes 4 Golden Globe wins, 7 Emmys, and 2 SAG awards. One of the interesting parts of this show is for the first 4 seasons, it either won a Golden Globe, an Emmy, or both. The 5th season, being its last one, it did not win either, which is a super interesting, thing to take away. Is the show had quality. It was good at least one thing every single season that it was on, other than the 5th season. Yes, you can find this show on DVD if you want to watch it after listening to us, or watch it before. I don't know how you got this far. If you wanted to watch it before listening to us, you can find it on Hulu. And then one final note, this show, there were rumors in 2022 that this show was going to actually be rebooted.
Of course.
Flockhart was going to reprise her role and also be an executive producer. And Karen Gist was going to actually lead the project itself. She's known for Mixed-ish, House of Lies, and Revenge. So we'll see what happens, and stay tuned, McBeal heads. But that is the history of the show. And gentlemen, as our flight comes to a land, I think that's a really nice segue into my two questions for you. And the first is, based off of the pilot, and the pilot alone, would you watch more Ally McBeal? And the second one is, it seems like there is interest for this sort of story to be retold, maybe with a new lens. The reboot was going to be about a young Black woman out of law school. So a different angle. But do you think, and Max, this sort of goes on your theme of, we've heard this story, or we've seen this type of storytelling a lot. Is there room for this in television today? Or maybe are we looking for different types of storytelling? And Rich, I'm going to go to you first.
Personally, I actually would give this a little bit more of a try. I know it is very much still of the time. It's taking chances that are of the time, in the same way that like Moonlighting takes chances that are of the time. I want to see more of her being good at her job. I want to see more legal elements of the show. Because I think the will they won't they with Billy is not particularly exciting enough for me to draw me in. But then I if they're I guess rebooting a legal franchise is like a, I don't know, that feels very not major risk taking. Like there's just so many legal procedurals out there that they could have just like come up with a new one, thrown Calista Flockhart in there, Mrs. Harrison Ford, and I don't know. I've been pretty anti reboot the entire time anytime we've asked this question. So I'm like, that is like a absolute softball of an idea at a network to reboot a formerly, like, I don't know, strong legal procedural. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, I was on the fence for this one because of that feeling of like, have I seen all of these tricks since?
Right.
But I really like the character of Ally McBeal. I really like Richard Fish. I really like Jane Krakowski as Elaine, and I'm intrigued to see what this show does once it really finds its legs and develops its world, because it's a sharp script. I mean, David E. Kelley knows how to write TV. He's done it successfully for going on 40 years now, is still doing it. We don't need a reboot because I don't think that the tricks of Ally McBeal translate to 2025 anymore. Plus, David E. Kelley's already writing enough law shows with The Lincoln Lawyer at Netflix and Presumed Innocent at Apple TV. He doesn't have time to write any more fake court cases for you people. Ally McBeal is the first hour-long winner for Outstanding Emmy for a comedy series. It's a feat that won't be accomplished again until 2018 with Maisel. It is trailblazing, it is groundbreaking, but it can also just exist as this piece of media from the 90s, and I'm happy to explore that.
Yeah. For myself, if I was just going off of the pilot and the pilot alone, right? And let's say I didn't know any history of this show, I would very much put this as a maybe. But
it's week 2 in 1997. A 6-year-old Geoff is deciding what to watch.
But knowing this show goes on to have the legacy that it has, right? During the 2024 Emmys, they brought out Calista Flockhart and the
in a cage next to Bob Newhart
in the unisex bathroom, and it was like the entire audience like lost their minds and stuff like that. And I was just like, I'm thinking back to, there's a reason why this show was named one of the new classic television shows in recent years. And I am curious. I want to see what is the why. What is the why behind people watching a ton of this? Am I going to binge this? Absolutely not. That is not the type of show this is. As far as this show being rebooted, there is something to keeping a legacy as is, right? There have been some shows that we've talked about that have been rebooted and they've gone on to great success for a new generation, and that's awesome. but there's something to be said of leaving this as a pillar of it was inspiration for a lot of people, sort of like how we've talked about moonlighting being an inspiration for a lot of people, or WKRP in Cincinnati, or news radio. That's okay. That is a great legacy to live, and allow it to inspire the next great television show that someone might want to write.
I just need to get to the Dancing Baby episode.
Yes, I agree.
I just need to get to the CGI Dancing Baby, and then I can rest.
Wait a minute moment. Not enough dancing babies. Well, gentlemen, that is our flight. But before we go, I want to make sure that folks can find you wherever they are. Max, where can folks find you?
Waiter, there's 2 people having sex in my latte. And you can find me on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
Rich, where can folks find you?
You can find me being an Ally McBeal on Instagram at Damn That's Rich. You can find original sketch comedy from Max and myself at Dadwagon Comedy on Instagram, because we don't know if the other one's going away or not.
And you can find me trying to practice law like I've seen in other TV shows, not Ally McBeal. I'll give my best theater kid monologue, and you'll see I'll win every case. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. If you're looking for the TV Pilot's License, you can find us on all social media platforms, as well as anywhere you listen to podcasts, and see our smiling faces on YouTube. If you have a question for the show or for our next episode, you can submit those at tvpilotslicense.com, or shoot us a call and leave us a voicemail at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for our sneak previews of some of the stuff that we have coming up, including some very special guests over the next few weeks. So make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then, keep on legaling.
Boston Legal.